Hi, I don't usually do video responses, but on this occasion I thought that it would. And so, just watching your video there about what you were saying about hisses and misses, and you make a couple of good points, and at the end I think you make one point which is just complete nonsense, and I'll talk about that closer to the end of the video. The first thing is the idea of hitting and missing, which is saying, okay, here is the whole Bible. There are a lot of things in the Bible, and so those things that I don't like, I think that are bad, such as the verses you mentioned earlier, I'm going to ignore those and I'm going to take the good ones like love and compassion, etc., etc., etc. And you say, because of that, a Christian can sort of consolidate their faith in such a way to make it work. And basically, you say that's a whole load of wallop and that it makes absolutely no sense and you're just picking and choosing. I think what you're doing though is saying, okay, here's a verse, I'm going to completely isolate it from the context of what is on around it and the context of the rest of Scripture and the message that we're given by God, by Christ. And we're going to say, let's look at that verse and say what that verse says. This is it. And you're saying this is the whole story. The problem is that is only one partial part of the story, and that you actually have to look at the whole story. For instance, the one where you talk about women and the idea of a subservient woman or whatever, there are also verses that talk about that yes, on a level that is true, but also that a man must love his wife as Christ loved the church, and the whole point about that is servanthood. So the man is servanthood to the woman in the same way that the woman is subservient to the man. And the point there is that there is give and take here. And I think your problem, what you're doing, is you're saying, here's a verse. I can take a verse out of anything or take isolated incidents and look at it and analyze it and say, so clearly this is wrong. But when you take the whole picture, it becomes clear. That's that first bit. I'm sure you're going to find a million holes there that you're going to say, well, that's crap, because what about this? All right, I'm not taking this out of context. Whatever. That's fine. Do what you want with that. At the end of the day, I'm really not here to argue because I don't see that does much benefit. The one thing I do get you about, and the one thing that just blows my mind, Noah and the flood. I don't care if it was a global flood, if it was a localized flood. Say whatever you want, use your arguments, whatever, fine. I believe it was a global flood. That's a different story. The argument about the Babylonian myth, you're making a presumption that the Babylonian myth became before the story of Noah, and that the story of Noah was taken from the Babylonian flood. To be perfectly honest, we have no way of knowing that. Both of them were verbal before they were written, and so there's no way of knowing which one came first. So, that's that bit. The second bit about, well, there was no rain before the flood. Completely right. That's what Scripture teaches us. And you say, so how did they get their fresh water? Well, God provided it. Ha ha ha, what a pile of crap. You completely miss a whole trick. Rain plays a part in the water cycle as we understand it today. Yet there are underground water reservoirs that we're told water comes from below as well as above. And so the idea of fresh water that has been filtered through rock just as it comes down mountains, etc., is not that ridiculous and not that silly to assume. In fact, the idea of the water reservoirs that provide fresh drinking water in deserts, etc., 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 it's not that far-fetched. And to so say, ooh, how could it have been done? You know, it's not that hard. I have to say, sometimes your videos, especially when you get a bit violent with your language and stuff, really bug me. But sometimes you make some good points that have to be answered. But I have to say, man, this time I feel like you completely missed the mark on the thing about how did they get their fresh water. You just completely missed it, because lots of people in drought-ridden land can get fresh water. It's not because of rain, although rain in the understanding now plays a big part of it, but underwater reservoirs, etc., 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 that could have been established. Anyway, that's all I have to say.